We're blocking the bedroom scene for the third time when her hand finds my thigh under the table. Not an accident. Her palm settles just above my knee, warm through the fabric, deliberate, certain, while she gives notes to the empty chair where the intimacy coordinator was supposed to be sitting, her voice professional and her eye contact directed somewhere that is not me. The heel of her hand presses lightly against the inside seam of my trousers and stays there while she speaks about sightlines and the camera's relationship to grief. The pressure increases, subtle, certain. Something tightens low in my sternum, just beneath the bone, like a wire being tuned to a frequency I didn't know I received. She knows exactly what my heartbeat is doing. She's directing this too. I don't move. Neither does she. If you want to hear uncensored too hot for YouTube stories, check out my Patreon in the description. Tell us where you're watching from and subscribe. Rewind 6 hours earlier. I have a specific ritual for days I don't want to examine too closely. I make coffee I don't drink. I run lines in the bathroom mirror until my face stops looking like mine and starts looking like hers, my character's, a woman in the middle of the most terrifying first of her life. I choose what to wear with more deliberation than I would admit to anyone, and tell myself that deliberation is professional, is craft, is a method performer's reasonable attention to physical truth. I changed the bralette twice. The first one was beige, practical, the kind you wear when nothing is going to happen. I put it on and looked at myself in the trailer mirror and thought, this is the correct choice. Then I thought about walking into that studio, and something shifted behind my sternum in a way I did not examine, and I changed it to the blush lace one, nearly sheer in direct light. I told myself it was about the costume underneath. The cream sweater has a wide neck, the wrong lines would show. I told myself this firmly. I believed it approximately 40%. Then I changed it back to the beige one and stood there for 3 minutes thinking about sightlines. Then I changed it back. I arrived on set at 2 p.m. for what the call sheet listed as private blocking session, scene 47, intimate, and what my body translated entirely without my permission as something else. Just me, Cass, and Mara, the intimacy coordinator, whose presence on days like this is both professionally essential and, I was beginning to understand, deeply inconvenient. Scene 47 is the one everyone on the production has been careful not to discuss too directly in my presence, as if I might bolt if startled. My character, Layla, and her counterpart. The first time Layla lets herself want something she has spent 29 years convincing herself she doesn't want. The script describes it in 2 pages. Cass's director's notes, which I have seen fragments of, the pages she sometimes forgets to turn face down, describe it in 6. The blocking notes for scene 47 are longer than the blocking notes for the film's climax. Cass Winters takes intimacy seriously. She takes everything seriously. That's the thing about her that other directors talk about in that specific way. Part admiration, part something more complicated. When they think she can't hear them. She's the director who shut down a production for 2 days because the supporting actor was experiencing genuine distress that everyone else had decided to call method commitment. She's the director whose actors call her at 2 a.m. when they're struggling and whom she actually answers. She's the director who rewrites scenes during production, without apology, if they aren't yet what they need to be. Who holds the monitor feed during playback with the specific expression of someone reading a letter they've been waiting years to receive. Who maintains a stillness during shooting that is so absolute it changes the ambient noise level of the room. I have worked with Cass Winters on 2 films over 3 years. I know her process the way I know my own breathing. Automatically, without having to think about it, the knowledge living in my body before it lives in my mind. She watches, she notes, she adjusts. She does not touch actors during blocking. That is what the intimacy coordinator is for. This boundary is not a rule she follows because it is a rule. It is a principle she holds because it is what makes her brilliant at the specific difficult task of asking actors to be genuinely vulnerable in front of cameras and crew and an audience they will never meet. I walked into the rehearsal studio knowing all of this. The studio is a long room on the 4th floor of the production building, the kind of space that used to be a dance rehearsal hall and shows it. One wall entirely floor-to-ceiling mirrors, old and slightly wavered in the glass. The kind that don't lie but do add a particular quality of history to whatever they reflect. The opposite wall carries framed stills from Cass's previous films, images I know as well as my own filmography. A woman standing in a doorway with her back to the camera, the light behind her. 2 people at a table, not looking at each other, the space between them more present than either of them. A close-up of hands, not a romantic gesture, just hands, existing near each other, the proximity doing all the work. The blocking table sat in the center of the room, small, rectangular, dark wood, 2 chairs facing each other across it. It was the kind of table that would have been unremarkable in any other context. In that room, with those proportions, it was not unremarkable. It was intimate in the way that small, functional things become intimate when placed precisely. 2 chairs, the width of a table, late afternoon light coming through frosted windows to the west. Cass was standing at the far window when I came in, her back to me. Black blazer sharp and deliberate over a charcoal turtleneck. Dark trousers, the low ponytail she has worn every day of every production I have been on with her. Jet black, severe, a choice as deliberate as everything else about her. She was holding her script in one hand and looking at something beyond the frosted glass that neither of us could actually see. She didn't turn immediately. She gave me the specific 2-beat pause she gives every room when she enters it or doesn't enter it. And in that pause, the room reorganizes itself around her, the way rooms have done for the entirety of the time I have known her. It's not a power performance. It's something more animal than that. Attention in a room with Cass Winters is not distributed evenly. It locates her. The specific quality of stillness she carries is not peace. It's more like a very controlled tension. The stillness of something that could move at any moment and has chosen for now not to. She turned. Something happened to my breathing that I noted and immediately set aside. "Mara called in sick," she said. No preamble, no hello. 3 years and she still greets me with the logistical fact most relevant to the current moment. "We can reschedule if you're uncomfortable." She was looking at me the way she looks at a scene she's deciding about. Not cold, never cold, but precise. Assessing. The dark brown of her eyes catches the late light from the window and holds it in a way that makes the assessment feel, despite its precision, like something else. I ran a very quick internal review of my own state. Uncomfortable. Was I uncomfortable? I walked through the inventory. Here is the room. Here is the woman who has directed me through 2 of the most important performances of my career. Here is the script with scene 47 in my hand. Here is the fact of Mara's absence. Which means no protocol, no structure, just Cass and her notebook and her red pen and the particular way she says again when she wants to see something that isn't on the page yet. The blush lace bralette, for reasons I was not examining, seemed suddenly very present under my sweater. "We can block it ourselves," I said. I heard my own voice say this. "I trust you." Something crossed her face. I have spent 3 years learning to read Cass Winters, and I still do not have a word for that expression. It moved through her quickly like weather, present and then rearranged into the composed professional attention she wears the way she wears the blazer, deliberately, as armor that has become second nature. "Let's start with the approach," she said. And we began. She started with the viewfinder. It's a small thing, handheld, rectangular frame, director's tool for composing shots before the camera is set. She uses it the way other directors use their hands, holding it up and looking through it at the world, and deciding what the world should look like reduced to that proportion. I had seen her use it 1,000 times. I had watched her hold it up in the middle of a crowded location and in the particular framing of her attention, locate the one true thing in the scene. She was holding it between us now. Standing at the edge of the performance space, the section of floor where 2 strips of colored blocking tape marked the invisible corners of a bedroom that didn't exist yet, watching me through the small rectangular frame. I was standing at the opposite edge of the tape. The scene, Layla, crossing a room, turning to face the woman she has wanted for a year and told herself, every day of that year, that she doesn't. "Run it once," Cass said. "Just the approach. Don't worry about where the camera is. Worry about where you are." I crossed the tape. I crossed the invisible room. I turned. She was watching through the viewfinder, and her gaze through the small frame was a different quality than her gaze without it. More concentrated, more precisely aimed, the difference between ambient light and something focused into a point. My pulse lived in my throat. I let her see my face. I let her see the moment I decided. "Again," she said. I went back. I ran it again. "Again. This time, when you turn to face her, let me see the moment you decide. The moment I decide. In the scene, it is Layla's moment. The decision Layla has been building toward for the entire arc of the film. The moment she stops protecting herself and lets herself be seen wanting something. I know this moment technically. I have been inside this moment emotionally for 3 weeks of preparation, sitting with it. letting it live in my chest until it feels as natural as breath. I turned. I let her see it. Not Layla's moment, mine. The specific quality of want that lives in me. The one that I have been directing at the character, at the scene, at the craft. Letting it come forward without a name. Just the emotion in its purest form. Present and visible in the specific way method performance makes things present and visible and real. The viewfinder lowered, slowly, not dropped. Lowered, like something she was choosing to put down, making a deliberate decision about the tool. She wasn't looking through it anymore. She was just looking. The specific quality of her gaze without the viewfinder was different. It was not the director looking through a frame deciding what the shot should be. It was something prior to that. Something that didn't have a professional name. Something in the hollow of my throat went alert. Not my mind, that location specifically where my pulse ran visible and fast. Like that, she said. Her voice had a different quality. Quieter. The kind of quiet that isn't volume as its density. Exactly like that. She didn't raise the viewfinder again. We ran the approach 7 more times. 8. I lost count somewhere around the 5th because what I was counting instead was the number of times her gaze did the thing it had started doing. Locating me specifically, with a precision that had moved past professional into something that didn't have the professional vocabulary. The viewfinder stayed at her side. She held it loosely, absently, the way you hold something you've forgotten you're holding because your hands are occupied with something else entirely, even when they aren't. On the 8th run, I turned, and she didn't say anything at all. The silence lasted long enough that I counted 4 of my own heartbeats. The hollow of my throat was still alert, that particular awareness that lives on the surface of skin before it lives in the mind, the body running slightly ahead of cognition. She said, "Break! 5 minutes!" She went to the window. I watched her stand there, the late light through the frosted glass making a warm, diffused amber that caught the line of her jaw, the precise architecture of her profile, the way she held the viewfinder at her side with a grip that was slightly too tight for a resting grip. I went to the small table by the wall and drank from the water glass that was there. 1 glass, hers from earlier in the afternoon, and I registered this without registering it, the way you register things that your mind has decided to file in the wrong drawer. I drank her water and set the glass back down and looked at my script and saw the margin notes I'd made 2 weeks ago. Technical, clean, actor's notation, Layla, the decision is already made. She's not deciding in this scene. She's arriving at a decision she already made. I had written that without understanding that I was also writing something else. 5 minutes ended. Cass turned from the window. "Table work," she said, the dialogue leading into the physical scene. We sat down. The table was small. I had registered this before, walking past it, blocking table, center of room, the brief notation in my mind of it as furniture, as set piece, as the object around which we would organize our afternoon's work. Sitting at it across from Cass, I registered it differently. The surface between us was approximately the width of my forearm. Her script was open to scene 47. My script was open to scene 47. There were her red pen annotations and my pencil annotations, and the particular intimacy of seeing someone else's handwriting on the same words you have been living inside for weeks. Cass's red pen moved across the notebook she kept separate, the black moleskin where she wrote blocking notes in a hand I was never permitted to read, though I had once, on the second film, caught a glimpse of a margin note that said, "Noor's stillness before she speaks. Build from here," and had spent approximately 2 weeks deciding what that meant. I watched her write now without being able to see what she was writing. "The line before the kiss," she said, not looking up. Her pen was moving. "You're hesitating. Why?" "She's scared," I said. "Of what, specifically?" The question sat in the air. Outside the building, the city was moving. Below us, traffic, wind, the ordinary sounds of 5 o'clock in a city that doesn't know anything significant is happening 4 floors above it. In this room, those sounds were very distant. The ambient noise in the room was Cass's pen on the page, the slight sound of the late light shifting quality through the windows as the day moved toward its end, my own breathing, which I was now aware of in the way you become aware of your own breathing when you start to think about it. "That it's not mutual," I said. "That she's reading it wrong." Cass set the pen down. She leaned forward. The table was small. She leaned forward, and the space between our faces went from the width of 2 forearms to the width of approximately 1. I could see the specific dark brown of her eyes. Not black, as they read in certain light, but a very deep, warm brown. And in the irises, the particular quality of attention she brought to the things that mattered to her. The kind of attention that felt, when it was directed at you, like being the only thing in a room. Is she reading it wrong? Her voice had gone low. Director voice. Except the quality of director voice and the quality of something that was not director voice were very close together now, close enough that the difference was technical rather than felt. She wasn't talking about Layla. I was aware of the exact weight of my own hands in my lap. I don't know, I said. My voice came out level. I was genuinely surprised by this. Her gaze held. 1 second. 2. The quality of the pause was dense. It had texture, almost. It was not empty silence, but full silence. And in the fullness of it, my body was doing several things simultaneously that I was cataloging with the detached precision of someone taking notes on a situation they are also experiencing. My breath. Too shallow. Corrected immediately, but there was a half-second window when it was audible in the quiet of the room and she was close enough to have heard it. The quality of my pulse in my throat. Still there, still fast. The specific awareness of the blush lace bralette under my sweater, which had nothing to do with anything and which I was not thinking about. Her hand moved. Under the table. I didn't see it. I felt it. The warmth of her palm on my thigh, just above the knee, settling there with a quality of deliberateness that was so complete it bypassed shock and went directly to something else. Something that lived below shock. In the place where the body makes its decisions before the mind has been consulted. The heat of her palm through the fabric of my trousers was heavier than it should have been for a hand just resting on a thigh. Like gravity had a specific relationship with this particular contact. Like her hand was not just warm, but was transmitting something that moved from the surface of the fabric down through the wool, through the blush lace underneath, through the skin, into the layer beneath the skin where sensation lives and is stored. I did not move. My breath, which I had just corrected to level, went somewhere else entirely, not audible, but present in my chest in a way that pressed outward. From the other side of the table, her voice continued. Professional, even. She was speaking now about the structure of the scene, the emotional beat that preceded the physical. And her other hand was on the table, her pen moving, red ink on white paper, blocking notes in her deliberate hand. The hand on my thigh did not move. I was aware, in the specific, exhausted clarity of someone who has stopped pretending to themselves, that I was not going to move either. The light through the windows was shifting. The warm amber of late afternoon beginning its long slide toward the cooler blue of early evening. The dual temperature zones of the studio doing something to the quality of the air in the room. Warm on my left side from the windows. Warm on my right side from her palm through fabric. Her other hand, the one holding the pen, gripped the edge of the moleskin suddenly. Briefly. The knuckles went pale against the black cover. I watched this from a location in my perception that was recording details with intense calm, the way the body gets calm in moments of high intensity, the adrenaline making everything slower and more precise. She was talking about the camera's position for the kiss. She was not talking about what her hand was doing. I was not talking about what her hand was doing. The intimacy coordinator's empty chair sat across the room and made no comment. I looked at my script. The margin note for this page said, "The wanting is not the danger. The saying it is." I had written that 3 weeks ago about Layla. I was thinking about it now about myself. "Stand up," Cass said, still the hand on my thigh, not moving. "I need to block the next beat." I stood. Her hand withdrew, not snatching away, not abrupt, just releasing. The warmth of it remaining in the specific location of my thigh for several seconds after the contact ended, the way a room holds the temperature of a person who has just left it. I registered the absence with the same detached precision with which I had registered the presence, noting it in the internal record I was apparently keeping. The interior of my right thigh, above the knee, warm in a specific location, the warmth not fading on any timeline I found reasonable. She stood. We were standing in the room now, the blocking table behind us, the mirror on one wall and the film stills on the other, the strips of colored tape on the floor marking the invisible geography of the scene. Cass moved to the center of the tape. She stood within it with the ease of someone for whom space is always intentional, who chooses where to stand in a room the way she chooses every other element of a scene. "The physical choreography," she said. She was not looking at me. She was looking at the space. Scene 47 after the dialogue. One character steps forward, the other stays. Her voice was back to its working register. I had a sudden vertiginous sense of time, like the previous 10 minutes had been a parenthesis, a held breath, and now the breath was released and we were back to the ordinary grammar of our professional relationship. Except the warmth in my thigh had not resolved, except the quality of the air in the room had not returned to what it was this morning. The step forward is the declaration, she said. She doesn't speak. The step says everything. I moved to stand at the edge of the tape. We were on opposite sides of the invisible room. She was standing where the other character would stand. The one who doesn't step forward, the one who stays. Show me the blocking, she said. Step forward. She took one step, demonstrating, then looked at me. I took one step. And then I was close enough to see what I could not see from across the table. The small scar near her left temple. Old, barely visible, a thin white line that I had noticed in passing over 3 years of working together and never considered directly. The specific quality of her jaw when it tightened slightly on one side. The masseter, the muscle of decision. The one that moves when she's choosing something and holding the choice back from her face. The way her breathing shifted, not dramatically, not in any way that would read on camera, but present to me at this distance, in the particular way that a breath changes quality when a room is very quiet and a person is very close. She smelled like cedar and cold linen, and very faintly, the specific mineral warmth that was hers underneath everything. The scent that had been in the air of every room I had ever shared with her, that I had been filing incorrectly for 3 years in the part of my memory labeled professional, set, work, craft. The other character doesn't retreat, she said. Her voice was barely above the ambient sound of the room. That's the consent, the staying. She was not retreating. The space between us was the width of a breath. Not metaphorically, literally. The space between us was exactly the distance at which each breath moved the air that reached the other person's skin. Her hand, the one that had been under the table, rose slowly. I tracked this in real time, every centimeter of its trajectory, the hand coming up from her side and stopping in the air between my sweater and my collarbone, not touching, just present. Fingers extended, slightly curved, hovering at the specific location of the hollow of my throat. My pulse in that location was audible to me. She held the hand there, hovering, not landing. Here, she said quietly. Her eyes moved from her own hand to my face. This is where I'd put the camera, the exact moment before. The exact moment before. The mirror on the wall to our left reflected us back at ourselves. I was aware of this in my peripheral vision, the image of the two of us standing in the geometry of the scene, the height of her, the deliberate architecture of her stillness, the way she angled toward me with the specific quality of someone who has made a decision and is in the process of not quite acting on it yet. I looked at the mirror. I saw what we looked like. Something settled in my chest with a finality I recognized. Not an emotion precisely, more like a fact. The specific physical sensation of a fact arriving after a long time of almost knowing it. Her thumb moved. A single brush, the pad of her thumb against the hollow of my throat, the exact point where my pulse was running fastest. One deliberate pass, skin against skin for half a second, then not. Her hand did not withdraw entirely. It stayed in the air at that location, very close, the heat of it present against my throat, even without contact. She felt my pulse. I knew she felt it. The specific count of it, the rate, the information it was transmitting without my consent. Again, she said, but she didn't mean the blocking. The words sat in the room's silence, and I did not answer it immediately, and in the space of that non-answer, I became very aware of the particular state of things. The late light, the empty building, the way the studio had reorganized itself over the course of the afternoon into something that was no longer simply a rehearsal space, but was something more intimate than that. More charged, the way a room changes when two people have been alone in it long enough and one of them has their hand near the other one's throat. I had a conversation with myself that lasted approximately 2 seconds. It went, I know what this is. I know what's been building. I know what the hand on my thigh was, and I know what this thumb against my pulse was, and I know what the viewfinder going down meant, and I know what question is in the air right now. And then, I have been performing Layla's Wanting for 3 weeks, and it has never felt like performance. And then, I know. I breathed out slowly. The breath moved the air between us. She felt it against her skin. I watched her feel it, the micro-response in her jaw, in the quality of her stillness, which went from very still to the particular different stillness of something choosing not to move. Noor, she said. My name. Not the character's name, not a direction. My name in her voice, with the specific quality her voice had in this room at this distance, with her hand still hovering at the location of my pulse. Something in my chest came loose. Not dramatically, not in a way that would read on camera, just a wire releasing its tension. A held breath finally let go. If I'm reading this wrong, she started. You're not. The words came out before I had given them permission, which was, I registered, with the small remaining rational part of my mind, very on brand for this entire afternoon. My body had been consistently several steps ahead of my cognition since the moment I walked in and saw her standing at that window. The light through the frosted windows had shifted all the way to gold now. The last direct light of the day, the quality that cinematographers call magic hour, and which is, in fact, a physical fact rather than a romantic metaphor. The light at this angle in this spectrum finds the edges of things and makes them luminous. It found the edge of her jaw. It found the line of her ponytail against the side of her neck. It found the specific sharp architecture of her collarbone above the turtleneck and made it visible through the fabric. She looked at me for a long moment, long enough to count, long enough that the counting itself became meaningless because I stopped counting and just let the looking be a thing that was happening, a fact of the room. I had watched this woman maintain absolute professional composure across 2 film productions, across the particular pressures of financing negotiations and cast conflicts, and a production shutdown, and one spectacularly difficult location shoot in winter rain. I had watched her redirect a crew of 40 people with a single sentence. I had watched her sit with a crying actor at 2 a.m. and not flinch and not offer platitudes and not perform comfort. Just be present in the very specific way she was present in this room, with the whole weight of her attention. I had never watched her composure do what it did now. It didn't collapse. That would be the wrong word. Too dramatic, too much the language of something lost. What it did was more precise. It released, like a structure that has been under careful, load-bearing tension and has chosen, at a particular moment, to let one specific joint move. Visible, controlled, chosen. Her jaw moved on the left side, that masseter, the muscle of decision, and something altered in the quality of her stillness, and her other hand came up and found the small of my back, and the pressure there was light and warm and entirely certain of itself, and she drew me forward the last 3 inches. The remaining air between us went away. Show me the next beat, I said. I heard my voice say this at almost a whisper. I did not entirely plan it, but the part of me that was still the professional, the performer, the actress who had been working toward Scene 47 for 3 weeks, that part of me was not absent from this moment. It was entirely present, watching, understanding finally what she had been reaching for when she said, "Let me see the moment you decide." She did. Her mouth found the hollow of my throat, the exact point her thumb had measured, the location she had said I'd put the camera here. And the contact was warm and deliberate and lasted long enough to feel intentional rather than accidental, long enough for my breath to catch and hold. Then again, then the very edge of her teeth against my collarbone, careful and asking, which was, I registered this, the most formally appropriate metaphor for the entire afternoon, her restraint and care and the very specific quality of her wanting me present in even this. The sound I made in the empty studio surprised me. Not loud. But there. She pulled back. Just enough to see my face, her hands at my waist. The quality of her gaze at this range was something I had no professional vocabulary for. It was past the language of cinema, past direction, past performance notes. It was the gaze of someone who has made a decision after a long time of not permitting themselves to make it, and who is looking at the thing they've decided with the full weight of everything it cost them to wait. That, she said. Her voice was different, still controlled. She would always be controlled. I understood this. It was the nature of her, the thing that made the difference between controlled and cold, legible and essential, but with a roughness underneath that had not been there this morning. That is the performance I want. Her hands slid lower, found the hem of my sweater, warm palms against the bare skin of my waist. The heat differential between the cool studio air and her hands was sharp and immediate, the contact landing on my skin before my nervous system had time to prepare for it. I was aware, in the particular clarity of this moment, that she had been deciding this for hours. The viewfinder going down on the first run, the hand on my thigh under the table, the thumb at my pulse point, the staging of the scene, the stepping forward, the staying, the consent of not retreating. She had been composing this the way she composed everything, with precision, with intention, with the specific patience of someone who knows exactly what they want the scene to do and is willing to build toward it without rushing. She was not rushing now. My sweater came off. She helped it, her hands moving with the same care and certainty they brought to everything. The specific quality of her touch, not urgent, but not tentative, simply sure of itself. It fell somewhere near the edge of the blocking tape. She went still. The particular quality of Cass Winters going still in a moment of significance was something I had witnessed in professional contexts many times. She went still when a take was perfect. She went still when she saw, through the monitor, something the camera had found that she had not expected, and that was truer than what she had intended. She went still the way a person goes still when something they have been waiting for arrives without warning, even when they have been building toward it. She was looking at the blush lace bralette. "You wore this to blocking," she said. Not a question. The observation of someone reading a scene, someone who understands what every choice means, whose entire professional practice is the art of understanding what choices are made and why and what they reveal. I didn't answer. I watched her not quite smile. The corner of her mouth, the left corner, the one that moved when she was thinking something she hadn't decided yet whether to say. It moved now without becoming a smile, a motion contained before it arrived. She knew. I reached for her blazer, my hands found the lapels, and she let me push it off her shoulders, let it slide, the fabric heavy and deliberate, the way everything she wore was deliberate. It fell. She did not look after it. Her hands found the hem of her turtleneck. She pulled it over her head in one clean motion, the unself-consciousness of someone for whom this moment has been internally prepared, who has arrived at it, knowing what it would cost, and paying that cost with her eyes open. The black silk-structured bra beneath was minimal and deliberate, the same word for both because they were the same thing with her. The deep plunge at the center, the particular architectural precision of it. I had seen Cass Winters in 3 years of professional proximity in every context that professional proximity produces. Early call times and late wrap nights and craft service at 6 a.m. and table reads in bad lighting and press junkets in very good lighting. And I had never seen her like this. I was aware that I was looking. I did not stop. We stood in the center of the studio, both of us in trousers and bras and the last of the day's light, the blocking tape under our feet, marking the invisible borders of a bedroom that was not yet built. The mirrors on the wall reflecting us from the side, the specific image of the two of us in that geometry, the height of her, the way she was angled toward me with a quality of attention that I had been misfiling for 3 years and was now understanding correctly. The viewfinder was on the blocking table behind her, the small rectangular frame through which she had spent the first hour of the afternoon looking at me and deciding. It sat there, abandoned, the tool she had put down when the tool became insufficient. She turned us, one deliberate motion, her hands at my waist, guiding. And then my back was to the mirror, and she was facing me, and the last light of the afternoon was behind her head, and she kissed me. Not the approach she had been directing, not the moment before. The thing itself, finally, the contact I had been building toward across 6 hours of deliberate proximity. Her mouth on mine with the particular certainty of a decision being enacted rather than still being made. Her hand in my hair, fingers threading through the honey blonde waves, palm at the back of my head. Not gripping, but holding. The distinction between those two things mattering enormously in the quality of the feeling. And my hands finding her bare waist, the warmth of her skin against my palms. The specific heat of skin on skin after so much fabric and so much air between us and so much time. The kiss was not frantic. It was the opposite of frantic. It had the quality of her, the controlled release of something that has been held with great discipline and is now, by choice, being allowed to move. I felt the decision in it. I felt the cost of the holding and the cost of the releasing, and the way both of those things were present simultaneously, layered in the quality of her mouth, the specific pressure of her hands, the sound she made very quietly that I felt more than heard. My back against the mirror was cool. Her hands against my ribs were warm. The contrast was present on my skin and in my awareness simultaneously, the body running multiple inputs at once, and all of them coherent, all of them saying the same thing. The sound of my own breath, the sound of her breath changing, the silence of the building around us, the particular silence of a place where all the other people have gone home, where the ordinary sounds of professional life have withdrawn and left only the sounds that belong to this specific room and this specific moment. She pulled back, just enough. Her forehead found mine, a specific gesture, intimate in a way that the kiss was not, in the way that the particular acts of proximity that don't have formal erotic names are sometimes more intimate than the ones that do. We were breathing the same air. Her hands were still at my waist. My hands were still at hers. And the skin beneath my palms was warm and present and real in the specific way that things you have been not quite imagining for a long time become real. The light through the windows had shifted to blue hour. The amber was gone. The cool blue of early evening filled the room without urgency, without drama, just the ordinary fact of a day ending. "We can't tell anyone," she said. Her voice was quiet. The roughness was still there. "I know. Not until filming wraps. I know." She pulled back enough to see my face. Her thumb traced my jaw, the gesture impossibly gentle, the thumb moving in a slow, careful arc along the bone, the underside of her knuckle against my skin. A touch so careful, it felt like its own kind of statement. The woman who had gripped my waist hard enough to leave the warm impression of her hands on my skin 5 minutes ago was holding my face now, with the specific delicacy of something she was deciding to be careful with. I let her be careful with me. "The bedroom scene," she said. The director voice was returning, not absent during the past minutes, not gone, never fully gone, but moving back to the foreground now, occupying its usual position. "Scene 47, I'm rewriting it." I looked at her. "Why?" She was looking at me with the gaze she used at the monitor, the gaze of recognition, of having seen something true and naming it to herself without looking away. "Because now I know what it actually looks like," she said. The viewfinder was still on the blocking table. The script with my margin notes was beside it, pencil annotations in my hand, increasingly personal across the pages. The technical observations becoming something else by scene 47. Her moleskin, the red pen resting across the open page. My sweater was somewhere near the door. Her turtleneck was somewhere near the table. The blocking tape marked its invisible geometry under our feet. The borders of a scene we would have to shoot in 3 days in front of 30 crew members and a camera and the lights and all the professional apparatus of the production that neither of us was currently thinking about. I looked at the viewfinder on the table, the small rectangular frame. Through it this afternoon she had looked at me, had held it up between us and through its borders had decided something, had watched me turn and let her see the moment I decided, and had lowered the frame and never picked it up again. The tool that was supposed to maintain the distance between director and image had become, at some point in the first hour, inadequate to the task. She had set it down. She had closed the distance herself. Her forehead was still against mine. Her hands were still at my waist. The building was quiet around us. The city below was doing the ordinary things cities do at the end of an afternoon, indifferent to what was happening 4 floors above it, in a rehearsal studio with wavered mirrors and colored tape on the floor and one abandoned viewfinder on a small, dark table. I thought about the margin note in my script. The wanting is not the danger. The saying it is. I thought about the blush lace bralette and the 2 times I'd changed it and the 40% of myself that had believed the excuse I'd given and the 60% that had known. I thought about the way the viewfinder had come down, slowly. The decision to lower it visible in real time, the moment the frame became something she no longer needed because she had found, without the lens, what she had been looking for. She was looking at me now without any frame at all. The unmediated thing, the specific dark warmth of her eyes at this range, close enough that the looking was almost a physical contact itself, almost arrived at my skin before her hands did. The last light of blue hour filled the room quietly. I looked at the viewfinder on the table and thought, tomorrow there will be a call sheet and a crew, and the particular professional grammar of production will reassert itself, and we will both perform the ordinary choreography of director and actress. And we will do this while knowing what the studio looks like at this hour, with the light, this color, and both of us standing in the center of the blocking tape. I looked at Cass. Her thumb moved again against my jaw. Slow, certain. She had stopped performing composure. Not lost it. Stopped performing it, which was different. She was still composed, still herself, the particular contained quality of her still entirely present. But the performance of it, the armor wearing, the deliberate management of her surface that had been set down on the table with the viewfinder. What was here, in its place, was her. I thought, I have been working toward this scene for 3 weeks. I have been building toward this scene for 3 years. I let her see that. I let it be on my face the way she had asked Layla's wanting to be on my face. Visible, present, not performed. She saw it. Her jaw moved. The masseter, the muscle of decision, the one that tightened when she was holding something back. It released. The choice of releasing it, visible in the specific way that a choice is always more visible than a response. More intentional, more itself. She kissed me again. Different from the first time, not the enacted decision, not the arrival, but something quieter and slower and with more room in it, the kind of kiss that has already made its argument and is now just being the thing it is. My hands at her waist, her hands in my hair, the blue hour light making everything in the room the particular soft quality of an ending that is also a beginning, which is the most accurate thing I can say about it. The viewfinder sat on the table in the fading light. She didn't need it anymore. She had found the frame herself. She had walked into it, and I had stayed, and the space between us had gone to nothing. And that was the scene. Not the one in the script, not the one for the camera, but the real one underneath it, the one she was already rewriting.